Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to clue you guys in on a significant bug that's affected the 4.0 branch for Star Citizen. Firstly, a shout out to the guys in Shadow Moses who did deep diving on finding and narrowing down exactly what the hit registration issues are that have been plaguing the 4.0 patch. Don't say we aren't good for the community. Usually I don't make videos about bugs, but I think given the significance of this issue, it's worth covering how it's impacted PvP in 4.0 and makes for an interesting video meta-wise. I've had to record most of this again because while I've been editing the video, Yogi's managed to track down the source of the bug and introduce a fix in a coming PTU build. So we'll keep an eye on that PTU build and hopefully it's now resolved. So with 4.0 came a lot of changes to how literally everything works in the game. The main culprit being changes that came along with server meshing, which is interwoven into what we would assume is every single mechanic of the game. The pip, which is the major aiming component, ship damage, weapons, all of this is affected and likely requiring revisiting. Basically, the short version is that in 4.0, the pip has been lagging behind player movement, which also ties into your FPS performance. This created a meta shift. I'll break it down shortly, but the gist of it is that the lower your frame rate, the less damage you would have been doing this whole patch. This causes an issue across the board for multiple reasons. We're missing our shots by firing on a target in the incorrect location. The pip is aiming at the shadow of your target and not a correct representation. The weapon system in Star Citizen is set up to assist players aim by converging the weapons with the use of gimbals towards the location of the pip. Meaning even when players are compensating for this new bug and trying to lead our shots ahead of the pip, this can still cause our weapon fire to be pulled off target like a magnet. It means well, but it's causing issues. This means it's extremely difficult to overcome the bug. Note that toggling fixed assist is just not a solution to this. With this bug came a meta shift. Because the pip itself in 4.0 has been unreliable, and the weapon system being outdated for the 4.0 branch at the moment, microscopic fighters are able to abuse this and rely on speed tanking the inaccurate pips. Where there was good balancing to keep, for example, snubs and smaller fighters in check previously, they've now fallen out of balance based on the issues inside of 4.0. This does not mean hitting these ships are impossible, it's just far more frustrating in higher speeds, for the 4.0 patch specifically. Confident this is just about to be resolved and we won't see much more racing ships and snub fighters speed tanking groups of players thanks to this issue. And the meta will return to flying commitment based fighters, which is what we want. So let's break down this issue and show you guys why in 4.0 you need to prioritize your frames. Before I break down exactly the hit registration issues, I need to show you guys a bug with the animations of doing splash damage or hitting a ship, where this could actually corrupt any data you're trying to collect or give you inconsistencies in a test. When a target's lost its shield, so you've taken the shields down, you're supposed to only do damage to the hull. The problem is that when you take someone's shield away, or they've lost their shields in the fight, or maybe their shields are turned off, for example, it still leaves a ghost layer of shield wrapping around the ship. Now, when you shoot at this ghost layer, or this shield that is not turned off or disabled, you're still seeing the spark animation. Which might give you this false indication that you're hitting the ship and doing no damage, when you're actually just hitting the shield that is no longer enabled or up. So if you guys see, you might look at this and think, oh, I should be doing hull damage here. No, you're hitting just off of this ship's hull and where the shield is supposed to be. Don't let this mislead you and just keep that in mind. Just because you're seeing sparks on the ship does not mean you're hitting the hull. Have forwarded this to CIG, hoping to get this one fixed. It should be a no-brainer, but just keep that in mind, yeah? If you're missing the ship's hull and just clipping the edge of it, very commonly you are hitting the shield or what is left of the shield. and not doing damage. So again, sparks don't mean that you hit every time. That's all you need to take away from this. In 4.0, it's no secret that we've taken a huge performance hit when it comes to FPS. Pair that with this bug and we're having huge damage issues when it comes to hit registration and being offensive, which is again led us into a very toxic meta and caused a lot of issues in PvP and, as far as I know, PvE as well. Now, there's a neat console command you can do in the 4.0 patch which sets a limit on your FPS. I'm putting it on the screen now. You can use this to recreate an environment that would be heavy on entities. It's important to know that in Security Point Korea, in AC on a custom match, you're getting arguably some of the best performance you can get in the game at all. And we're going to use that location to show you guys the drastic difference between high performance FPS and low performance. So here I've set the limit to 30. Me and my teammate Albert are going to go into a drift and he's going to turn off his shields just so you guys can see the points getting gained when I'm hitting. Now look at the pip, it's just below the ship. This is inaccurate, and what the issue with 4.0 is, this pip should be higher than the ship to compensate for those shots then landing onto the hull. It is not, it's lagging behind the ship, which is causing the bullets to bend below it. This should all be registered damage. This is high accuracy. We're even getting the green highlight, which means that we're within the convergence, but none of this is hitting. I want to be very clear here too, I'm playing with 30 FPS limited here, and we're getting next to no damage. This means if your computer isn't up to the task of getting well above 30 frames, then you are actually hurting significantly when it comes to dealing damage. Locations that have heavy entities or bad performance are also a direct cause of bad hit registration. This has essentially made the TTK twice as long, if not 3 times longer, in the 4.0 branch, and are extremely inconsistent and frustrating. You guys can even see the sparks are hitting the corner of the ship, but we're not getting any damage registered by no point gain. So again, everything here is all missing, despite the fact that we're directly on pip. Next test is me increasing the FPS to 60. Now keep in mind too, me and Albert here are going to boost for this speed to show the issue. With 60 FPS at 225 ceiling speed, you're going to get reasonable hit registration to about 70%. But if we're to incorporate boost into that and start shooting, the issue is still present. So the higher the speed and the lower the frames, the less accurate the pip, the bigger the issue. So ships with high speed and are smaller in size are abusing this or getting the most out of this bug. So again, as soon as the boost wears down and he's run out of tank, you guys can see I can immediately start dealing damage. So we're still limited to 60 frames per second here. Using the console command, I've increased the frame cap from 30 to 60. We're going to get aligned here. His shields are off again just for the demonstration. We're going to start boosting and then we'll realign. We'll keep the same similar distance and we'll start shooting. Okay, the speed increases. And we're seeing some hits land, but many of it missing, right? So it just shows the higher the speed and the less frames is a direct correlation with how much damage we're doing. Now the boost is emptied and we're at the 225 speed limit, and you see the hit registration starting to come up. So it's starting to get closer to reasonable here, but it's still an inaccurate pip, which is still increasing the TTK by at least a magnitude of 2. Alright, next demonstration, we're capped to 30 FPS, and this is a snub fighter. This is the Fury. Now, I don't need to do the face-to-face test with the Fury because we know that that profile or the shape of that ship, the frame, is even smaller than the Gladius. But what we can use this test for is the fact that the Fury from all angles is actually a tiny ship. So you can see third party, a 90-degree angle, any of this, we are having huge hit registration issues thanks to the lower frames. So again, the snub fighters really start to perform the worse the conditions get, which is not what we want from the game, right? Keep in mind too, this is unboosted. This Fury is not even attempting to get away from me, and we're not even able to land hits at any reasonable amount. Alright, next up is the Fury boosted. So what you guys can take away in the pattern is how large is the ship. If the ship is very small, has a higher speed, and you have below 100 frames, you're starting to have hit registration issues. And then the lower your frame count is inside of that, the more frustrating and less damage you're essentially applying. Alright, next up is the M50. Unboosted isn't nearly as much of a problem. The hit registration at 30 FPS is still poor, but closer to reasonable, I would say. Keep in mind too, the ship's flying in a straight line, but this again isn't terrible. Keep in mind, if you can, look where the pip is placed and how close to off the ship it is. It's at the rear of the engines, almost off the ship entirely. Next up, we've got the boosted M50. I had to use another player in the org to do this test. It's getting away from me because it's a different archetype with a higher top speed. So I ask him to slow down so I can give you guys the correct demonstration. I gain closer to it. This is unboosted. He fires off the boost again. You guys can see the difficulty in hit registration here. Far worse than unboosted. Definitely an issue. Keep in mind too, this is some straight line stuff. We're not even attempting to change direction here. We've got the Gladius. Look at where the placement of the pip is with the Gladius. It's closer to the middle of the ship because it also is a larger ship. That was first unboosted. Now this is boosted. It's definitely starting to see some issues here with the hit registration. Keep in mind, this is all 30 FPS cap. So I would argue closer to reasonable, but still issues are there. This explains why the hit registration or the TTK has gone up with the 4.0 branch. It also explains the frustration in dogfighting right now and in PvP where it feels very inconsistent. And it really gives you the sense of feeling robbed when the performance goes down. It's a pretty critical bug. I think this needs to get addressed pretty urgently given how much of an impact it's actually having. Especially now that we've got some deep understanding of exactly where it is. Now, how does this impact the meta of PvP right now? So in 4.0, we haven't had any major shakeups with the meta. We've just started to see some of these smaller ships get some more time in PvP right now. It's increasingly frustrating because these ships are become useful just thanks to a bug and creating a pretty frustrating experience because the game can't catch up to the speeds, especially with the inaccuracies of the pip. So flying ships like racing ships that are microscopic or Furies and snub fighters, Archimedes and stuff is just outflying the pip issue. And so we're starting to see some of these ships pop up. Is this the end-all be-all meta? No, it's definitely not. You can just out-saturate it with ships like a Hornet, spray and pray. And thanks to some good balancing in the earlier master modes, these fighters were nerfed in other aspects. For example, some have slower turn rate, some have a lack of a quantum drive and are hard to run logistically. Some have other issues like smaller damage output. This has been good balancing in the past, but now that this issue has become prevalent, these ships are starting to see their time in the sun. The only issue is they're being used competitively just to avoid being hit, thanks to the issues with 4.0. Thanks to Yogi and the team for looking into this, and the SM guys and the rest of the community that helped contribute to the IC reports and do the investigating. I invite you guys to test this yourselves before it gets fixed, to confirm any of this if you feel you need to. Guys, I appreciate you. Hopefully this video provided some insight that you guys wouldn't have seen before. You guys know where to find me. I'm in both the Discords and live on Twitch almost every night, and I will catch you guys in the next video.